Have you ever sat in a quiet church pew, where the air feels sacred, where voices of children rise in prayer, where safety feels like it's stitched into the walls? Imagine that sanctuary turning into a place of terror, shattered in seconds by gunfire. On the morning of August 27, 2025, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that unimaginable nightmare came true. 2 children were killed, 17 more were injured, and a nation was left asking the same haunting question: why? This is not just another story of violence. This is a story about obsession, identity, hatred, and despair. It's a story of a manifesto uploaded to YouTube, a chilling message to the world, moments before bullets ripped through stained glass and prayers were drowned out by screams. Tonight, we're diving deep into the tragic events at Annunciation Catholic School, piecing together who the shooter was, what was inside their disturbing videos and handwritten manifesto, and why the FBI now calls this an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime. Stay with me, because the deeper we go, the more chilling it becomes. And as we unravel this story, I want you to tell me what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments as we go along, because this isn't just news. This is a reflection of the world we live in right now. And if you find this story as important as I do, make sure to hit that like button so it reaches more people. And of course, subscribe, because there are stories that need to be told, and together, we'll uncover them. The story begins on a Wednesday morning, just a few days into the new school year. It's around 8:30 a.m., and inside Annunciation Catholic Church, children from kindergarten to 8th grade are gathered for Mass. Parents and parishioners sit among them, about 200 souls together under the soft glow of stained glass windows. For these kids, it was supposed to be a moment of routine, of peace, of prayer. But outside the church, standing with weapons carefully chosen and legally purchased, was a 23-year-old former student of that very same school. Their name was Robin Westman, a name that, within minutes, would be seared into headlines and history. Robin had come prepared: a rifle, a shotgun, a pistol, 3 doors barricaded with wooden planks, a smoke bomb waiting in a vehicle nearby. This was not random. This was not impulsive. This was calculated. And then, it began. Gunshots tore through the stained glass windows, showering children in shards as bullets ripped across the pews. 2 children, just 8 and 10 years old, were struck and killed where they sat. 17 others were injured. 14 children, their small bodies broken but still clinging to life, along with 3 parishioners in their 80s. In the chaos, teachers and older students shielded the younger ones. Parents screamed, ducked, prayed. A 6th grader named Chloe would later describe how she raced downstairs and hid behind a table, her heart pounding so loud she thought it might give her away. A 5th grader, Weston, remembered how his friend Victor threw himself over him, shielding him from the gunfire, an act of courage that may have saved his life. Inside that church, in the middle of pure terror, there were moments of selfless bravery. And outside, after firing dozens of rounds, Robin Westman turned one of the guns on themselves. By the time police stormed the scene, the attacker was dead. But here's the detail that makes this story even more disturbing. Hours before the shooting, Robin had left behind something: a series of videos, a handwritten manifesto, uploaded to YouTube, scheduled to go live at almost the same moment as the attack itself. A digital confession, a final performance, a breadcrumb trail into the mind of someone willing to slaughter children inside the very church where they once prayed as a child. And when investigators watched those videos, when they flipped through that journal, what they found wasn't clarity. It wasn't a neat motive. It was chaos, contradictions, a swirl of hatred, depression, obsession, and despair. The FBI quickly classified the shooting as both domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. But even those labels, heavy as they are, only scratch the surface of what really drove Robin Westman. To understand, we have to go back into their past, back into their connection to the school, back into the dark pages of that manifesto. And that's where we're going next. But before we continue, I want to ask you something. Do you think tragedies like this are born from ideology or from broken, untreated pain? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to share with you what investigators discovered in Robin's own words, and I promise, it's darker than you think. To understand this tragedy, we have to step inside the mind of Robin Westman, and the only way to do that is through the digital trail they left behind. Just hours before the attack, Robin uploaded a series of videos to a YouTube channel under the name Robin W. These weren't random rants. They were carefully timed, scheduled to go live right before the shooting began, as if the world needed to see, as if infamy itself was the final goal. The first video, 11 minutes long, begins in silence. The camera focuses on a sketch of Heisenberg, the infamous meth-cooking anti-hero from Breaking Bad. And then the frame shifts. A suicide note, handwritten, apologizing to friends and family for forever tainting the rest of their lives. But what's missing is justification. There's no explanation, no political speech, no clear manifesto, only chaos. Then the weapons appear, firearms laid out like trophies, magazines covered in scribbled words, some hateful, some nonsensical. One read, "Kill Donald Trump." Another, "Defend equality." Next to it, vile anti-Christian and anti-Semitic slurs. One phrase, scrawled in jagged handwriting, 6 million wasn't enough. Another, "Where is your God?" Contradiction stacked on contradiction. Political slogans that cancel each other out. Hatred of everyone and everything. This wasn't a coherent ideology. This was the journal of a storm, a mind twisting in on itself, feeding on the darkest corners of the internet. The second video was worse, 20 minutes long. Robin flips through a journal, pages filled with a strange phonetic Cyrillic script, as if trying to code their own thoughts into something indecipherable. Yet what little was clear pointed to obsession. Past school shooters, church killers, the names of mass murderers scrawled like idols. Sandy Hook, Charleston, Columbine, as if these atrocities were not warnings but inspirations. And then came the third video, the most chilling of them all. The camera shows a drawing of Annunciation Catholic Church, the same church where Robin once prayed as a child, the same church where hours later they would open fire. And then, a hand, clutching a knife, stabbing the drawing again and again, as if rehearsing the attack. YouTube removed the videos almost immediately after the shooting began, but by then they'd already been copied, downloaded, and spread. The digital world never forgets. And so, in a way, Robin's twisted wish was fulfilled. The message was seen, replayed, dissected. The manifesto itself, a collection of handwritten pages, was no less chaotic. At times, it read like a diary of despair. "I don't want to do this to spread a message," Robin wrote. "I do it to please myself. I do it because I am sick." One entry admitted, "I've been suicidal for years, corrupted by this world." And then, almost tenderly, a postscript to a sibling. "Please make up with Mom." How do you reconcile those words? On one hand, a suicidal young adult drowning in depression. On the other, an individual willing to massacre children in a place of worship. Investigators pieced together a timeline from the journal entries. It started months before the shooting. Notes from May 2025 revealed Robin's obsession with mass shootings dated back to the 7th grade. By August 8th, they wrote about using their paycheck to purchase an AR-15 and magazines. On August 20th, they scouted the church, noting entrances, exits, and how to barricade the doors. On August 21st, they visited a shooting range, rehearsing for what was to come. And on August 27th, they followed through. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't sudden. This was premeditation, cold and deliberate. But here's the thing. Even with all this preparation, even with all this scribbling and recording, Robin never offered a clear motive. Not political, not religious, not even personal revenge. Instead, the writings screamed of nihilism, of wanting to destroy because destruction itself brought satisfaction. And maybe that's the most terrifying part, because if violence doesn't need a cause, if it doesn't need a reason, then how do we stop it? Before we go deeper, let me pause here. If you're still watching, it means this story matters to you. And I want this to reach more people, because conversations like this can't just fade away. So, take a second, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts so far, and if you're new here, subscribe. These are the stories the world needs to unpack, no matter how dark they are. And together, we're going to keep unpacking them. Now, you might be wondering, who exactly was Robin Westman? What was their connection to this school? What could drive someone to turn on the very community that raised them? To answer that, we have to look at their past, their family, their history, their identity, and the complicated story of who they were before they became a killer. And that's where we go next. To understand this tragedy, we can't just focus on the crime. We have to ask, who was Robin Westman before that morning? What pieces of their life led them to this breaking point? Robin wasn't a stranger to Annunciation Catholic School. They weren't some outsider targeting a random community. No, this was deeply personal. Robin had walked those same hallways as a child, graduating from 8th grade back in 2017. Their mother, Mary Grace Westman, worked at the school as a parish secretary for years before retiring in 2021. This wasn't just a church to Robin. It was part of their childhood, a place filled with memories, some good, some clearly twisted over time into something darker. Investigators believe this connection mattered. This wasn't just hatred of Catholics in the abstract. This was vengeance directed at a place tied to their own story. Imagine that. A community that had once been their foundation, turned into their chosen target. But even beyond that connection, Robin's life carried shadows. Born into a family of 3 children, Robin grew up in suburban Minneapolis. Their parents divorced in 2013, leaving fractures that seemed to ripple through the years. By 2025, Robin was 23 years old, working brief, unstable jobs, the most recent at a medical cannabis dispensary, a job they quit just 11 days before the shooting. There's no lengthy criminal record, no long police history. To the outside world, Robin may have seemed troubled, but not dangerous. And that's what makes this so chilling. They were able to purchase every firearm legally, the rifle, the shotgun, the pistol, all obtained with no red flags. But perhaps the most complicated part of Robin's story was their struggle with identity. Court records from 2020 showed they petitioned to change their name from Robert to Robin. The paperwork included a note, identifies as female. Their mother supported the petition. Federal officials described them as transgender. But the manifesto painted a different, more conflicted picture. One entry read, "I know I am not a woman, but I definitely don't feel like a man." Another, "I don't want to dress girly all the time, but sometimes I like it." What does that tell us? It tells us that Robin was in conflict, with themselves, with their body, with labels, with how the world saw them. And yet, after the shooting, the public quickly tried to weaponize this detail. Some voices rushed to frame the attack as the product of a trans agenda. Others said it was proof of anti-trans hate. Politicians and commentators grabbed at the identity issue, spinning it to suit their narratives. But here's the truth. The writings show no single political motive. They show no coherent ideology, just contradiction after contradiction. Robin seemed to hate everyone, including themselves. That Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey made a public plea, donned to use this tragedy to villainize the transgender community, because what Robin did cannot be explained away by one label. This was a storm of pain, obsession, and hatred that transcended identity politics. And if you've been watching closely, you'll notice the pattern, the contradictions, The chaos, the fixation on past mass killers, the scribbled symbols from every side of the political spectrum. Robin wasn't championing a cause. They weren't rallying a movement. They were trying to burn the world down to reflect the fire inside themselves. It's a disturbing reminder. Sometimes the most dangerous killers aren't those with a clear ideology, but those with none at all. But this raises another haunting question. How did Robin's private pain become so public? How did their personal obsessions grow into a meticulously planned act of terror? The answer lies in the digital world, the echo chambers of the internet, where obsession feeds on obsession, and lonely individuals find twisted companionship in the legacies of killers who came before them. And that's where our story heads next. But before we continue, I want to hear from you. Do you think Robin's identity struggles and personal history with the school fueled this attack more than politics ever could? Or do you think ideology, even a jumbled one, always plays a role in acts like this? Drop your thoughts below, because your perspective adds to this conversation. And if you're finding this story eye-opening, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this investigation. Because the next part takes us inside the digital spiral that turned a suicidal young adult into a mass murderer. When the FBI and Minneapolis police pieced together Robin Westman's story, one thing became clear. The internet wasn't just a side detail, it was a stage. It was the soil where their obsessions grew. Think about it. Robin didn't just plan an attack, they filmed it in advance. They scheduled videos to release at the exact moment their bullets tore through stained glass. They made sure their words and images would outlive them. And the internet delivered exactly what they wanted. Within hours of the shooting, copies of the videos spread across forums, Telegram channels, Twitter feeds. Some people condemned them. Others analyzed them like puzzle pieces. A disturbing few celebrated them. That's the echo chamber effect. It's not just that the internet amplifies hate. It's that it validates it. If you're lonely, angry, suicidal, you can find others who will tell you you're not alone, even if what unites you is the worship of death. And Robin wasn't the first. They were part of a lineage. Their journals showed they had idolized Adam Lanza, who massacred children at Sandy Hook. They admired Dylan Roof, who killed 9 people in a Charleston church. These killers became twisted role models, and the internet was the museum where their legacies were preserved, admired, even glorified. Robin's writings admitted it openly. Sandy Hook was my favorite exposure of school shootings. I love the awful slaughter of innocents. Words that send chills down your spine. Words that show how online communities can turn mass murder into myth, turning killers into icons for those looking for meaning in destruction. And the platforms? They were caught in the middle. YouTube took down Robin's videos almost immediately once the attack began. Their policies are strict. No glorification of violence, no footage made by attackers. But here's the problem. By the time they reacted, it was too late. The videos were already downloaded, mirrored, uploaded elsewhere. The damage was done. This raises a haunting question. What responsibility do platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter have to stop attacks like this before they happen? Should they detect and prevent content like Robin's Manifesto from ever going live? Or would that kind of surveillance go too far, infringing on privacy and free speech? It's a delicate balance. But what we know is this. Robin used the internet as part of the plan. The attack wasn't just physical, it was digital. The goal wasn't only to kill, it was to be remembered, to join the dark pantheon of mass shooters whose names echo across chat rooms and message boards. And while investigators searched for facts, the media machine roared to life. Headlines rushed out, some wrong, some exaggerated. On social media, misinformation spread faster than the truth. Was Robin transgender? Was this a far-left attack? Was it an anti-Christian hate crime? Was it somehow linked to Donald Trump, as the scribbles on the gun suggested? Everyone wanted an answer that fit their narrative. But the truth was messier. The manifesto wasn't a political essay. It was a diary of contradictions. Kill Donald Trump sat next to Defend Equality on a pride sticker. Anti-Christian slurs sat beside anti-Semitic rants. It wasn't left-wing, it wasn't right-wing, it was chaos. And yet, political voices seized on pieces of it to push their own agendas. That's the danger of modern media. Before the facts are clear, the narratives are already written, and those narratives stick. They shape how we see tragedy. They divide us further when unity is what we need most. So here we are, left with a story that doesn't fit neatly into anyone's political box. A young adult drowning in depression, obsessed with mass killers, legally buying guns, planning a massacre against their own childhood school, leaving behind a digital manifesto that was less a message and more a scream into the void. It forces us to ask questions bigger than this one event. How do we stop someone with no criminal record but violent fantasies in their journal from legally buying weapons? How do we balance the need for online freedom with the danger of violent content spreading unchecked? How do we learn to pause, to verify facts, before twisting tragedy into fuel for our own agendas? These are not easy questions, but they're questions we can't afford to ignore, because if we do, the cycle repeats. And now, let's come back to where we started. That quiet church pew filled with children. Innocence shattered by violence. Parents forever changed. Survivors scarred by memories of hiding, of praying, of shielding each other. 2 children never went home that day. 17 others carry wounds, some visible, some invisible. A community will never be the same. And Robin Westman? Their name will be remembered, yes, but not as a hero, not as a martyr, only as another reminder of how obsession, hate, and despair can destroy everything in its path. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Stories like this are hard, but they matter, and I want to hear from you. What do you think is the biggest lesson from this tragedy? Is it about gun laws? About online radicalization? About untreated mental health? Or is it something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just my story to tell. It is ours to reflect on together. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear the truth, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. Because the more we talk about it, the better chance we have of breaking the cycle. In the end, the story of Robin Westman and the Annunciation Catholic School shooting is not just the story of one person, one community, or one terrible morning. It's the story of how brokenness festers in silence, how obsession grows in the shadows, and how violence can erupt when pain, hatred, and access to weapons collide. On August 27, 2025, 2 children, just 8 and 10 years old, lost their lives. 17 others were wounded, including 14 more children who will carry scars, both seen and unseen, for the rest of their lives. Families shattered. Friends left in shock. A church, a place meant for faith, safety, and community, turned into a crime scene. And the shooter? A 23-year-old who once sat in those very pews, a child of the community, turned against it. Robin Westman died by their own hand before police could even reach them. But their words, their videos, their manifesto, those remain, echoing across the internet like a ghost that refuses to fade. The chilling truth is this: Robin wanted to be remembered. Not for their life, not for their struggles, but for their violence. And in a way, the world gave them that. Their videos spread, their name trended. Their story was picked apart in headlines, in forums, in comment sections, and every time it spread, the cycle deepened. A cycle where killers become infamous, where their names outlast the names of their victims. But here's the choice we face right now, as viewers, as storytellers, as people living in this digital age. Do we let their name echo louder than the lives they destroyed? Or do we flip the script and remember the children, the survivors, the community that rose up in the face of terror? Because in Minneapolis, Something else happened that day, something Robin's manifesto never predicted. Amid the chaos, kids shielded each other. Teachers pulled students to safety. A community rallied around its most vulnerable. And in the days after, as candles were lit and prayers whispered, people vowed that Annunciation Catholic School would not be remembered as just the site of a massacre, but as a place that endured. That is the part of the story worth carrying forward. Robin Westman's contradictions, their hatred, their nihilism, those should be studied, yes, understood, so that we can prevent the next tragedy, but not glorified, not celebrated, not turned into legend. The lesson here is hard but necessary. Violence does not always wear the face of ideology. Sometimes it wears the face of despair, of confusion, of obsession. And that makes it even more dangerous because it cannot be easily categorized or predicted or explained away. So where do we go from here? We look harder at how guns are purchased and whether our laws can catch warning signs before tragedy strikes. We look closer at the internet, not just as a tool for connection, but as a weapon for radicalization. And we demand accountability from the platforms that profit off it. We push back against the urge to twist every tragedy into political ammunition and instead commit ourselves to the harder task of understanding. And maybe most of all, we learn to listen to the kids who feel lost, to the adults who feel broken, to the voices that whisper despair long before they scream it in violence. Because the story of Annunciation Catholic School should not end in blood. It should end in change. If you've made it this far, thank you. This wasn't an easy story to tell, and it wasn't an easy one to hear. But the fact that you're still here tells me you care. So let me ask you, what is the one thing you think society must change to stop tragedies like this from happening again? Drop your answer in the comments. I'll be reading them, and I want to hear every perspective. And before you go, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Not because of the algorithm, but because these conversations matter. Together we can shine a light on the darkest corners of our world and maybe, just maybe, stop them from swallowing us whole. This is not just a story about death. It's a story about choice, about what we choose to remember, what we choose to change, and what we choose to carry forward. The victims of Annunciation Catholic School deserve that much. And so, as we close this chapter, remember this. The shooter's manifesto may have been loud, but the resilience of a community is louder. Stay safe, stay aware, and until next time, take care of each other.